Number 1.
Nicole Fitz was a single mother, raising her daughter Arianna all by herself in Oakland, California. Due to this, Nicole often had to work double shifts at her job at Best Buy to make ends meet. She ended up hiring two sisters named Helena and Cielo Hearn to be Arianna's full-time babysitters. The women loved sweet little Arianna so much, they told Nicole they were willing to watch her overnight. This allowed Nicole time to continue working and searching for a more permanent place for Arianna and herself to live. Arianna had been staying with the Hearn sisters for quite some time when Nicole finally found a place to live in late March 2016. Her co-worker, Goyette Williams, had an extra room at her place that she offered to Nicole and Arianna. This was a perfect setup for Nicole. The home was located only a few minutes away from work. However, Goyette's home was also located miles away from the Hearn sisters' home, and Helena and Cielo were not happy about having to let Arianna go. Nicole allowed Arianna a few extra days with the Hearn sisters while she settled into the new place, but she soon learned that they had taken Arianna 6 hours away to Disneyland without her permission. This was the last straw for Nicole, and she told Helena that she wanted Arianna to come home to her for good by April 3, 2016. The Hearns actually returned to their home with Arianna before then, but Nicole still agreed to allow them to spend time with Arianna until the agreed-upon date. On April 1, 2016, Nicole withdrew $600 from an ATM and told Goyette that she had to go meet up with Helena at a local restaurant. According to Goyette, Nicole said, "I have to meet my babysitter. She's upset, I need to go see if she's okay." Nicole intended to be gone for only a few minutes, but she unfortunately never returned. Her last known communication was a text that she sent to Goyette at 12:45 a.m. It simply stated that she was on her way to Fresno with a person named Sam. Goyette did not recognize that name, nor did she know how Nicole was getting to Fresno. Nicole never returned, and she was reported missing by her family members on April 5, 2016. By this point, none of Nicole's relatives knew of Arianna's whereabouts either, and she was also reported missing. A few days passed without any sign of Nicole or Arianna. Then, on April 8, 2016, Nicole's body was found buried in a shallow grave at John McLaren Park. Investigators have not revealed how exactly Nicole died, but it is clear that she was murdered. According to friends, Nicole had been violated, and her body was covered by a piece of plywood with some sort of symbol painted on it. Authorities believe that the persons who buried Nicole brought that board with them, and they are appealing to the public for any information about the symbols painted on the board. Meanwhile, Arianna still remains missing. Police executed search warrants at both Helena and Cielo's homes, but reportedly have not found any sign of Arianna at either place. Investigators are currently not revealing much information about the Hearn sisters, however they have stated that their statements about Arianna's whereabouts have been inconsistent. At this time, Helena and Cielo are no longer cooperating with the police. Reporters have attempted to contact them as well, to no avail. In fact, when reporters visited Helena's home, they were told by neighbors that Helena and her children were long gone. Nicole's murder and Arianna's disappearance both remain unsolved. The FBI is actively investigating the case. Nicole and Arianna's relatives have put forward a $10,000 reward for information that could solve their cases. Additionally, the Best Buy that Nicole worked at has put forth another $10,000 as well. Anyone with information on Arianna's whereabouts or the homicide of Nicole is asked to call the SFPD 24-hour tip line at 415-575-4444 or text a tip to TIP 411 and begin the text message with SFPD. You may remain anonymous.
Number 2.
Situated between two gravestones inside Lincoln Cemetery in Atlanta is a bright green patch of grass, no gravestone, no name, no date. I'm just not ready to see her name on a headstone with an end date. I'm not ready to do that, Katara Ham said, with tears streaming down her face about her daughter's grave site. Headstones just make it so final, like, that's it, that's over. I'm just not ready to see her name on a headstone. It's hard enough for me to have to come to her grave and just, that's your child under there, and you can't do anything about it. In the shadow of downtown Atlanta, a secret is tucked inside a quiet Fulton County community. Just behind the front door of her grandparents' College Park, Georgia, home in an easygoing neighborhood hanging on the edge of a wooded backdrop, 17-year-old Randisha Love was murdered. Ham, 40, found her daughter when she came home, shot 5 times in the face and torso on Tuesday, January 12, 2016. Without closure, answers and an arrest, it's a sight she is haunted by every single day. The ending to Love's story remains a mystery for police, since nothing was taken. She was not sexually assaulted. There were no signs of forced entry, no obvious motive for her murder. This pain is an unexplainable pain that I feel every day, and I just can't even explain the way I feel because I'm just so hurt. And I'm angry because they felt the need to take my daughter's life, and there's no reason that they could tell me why they did it. And I will never understand it. Never. 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 The brisk Georgia winter day started like so many others with a text to her mom at 7:37 a.m. In her mom's phone, as Pookie, Love said, "I'm on the bus. Okay, love you, they have a great day," followed by dozens of heart, crown and kissing emojis. "Love you too." More colorful emojis close out their conversation. Love taught her mom how to use emojis, she giggled. It was almost like a secret language between them, adding that extra touch of love and hugs and kisses. Ham looked forward to getting those text messages from her teenage daughter each day. But now, every day that her phone remains silent, sans pings to indicate she's received a new text message, is a day that her heart breaks a little more. That day in 2016, that started with heart emoji-filled text messages, would end in a way that would shatter her mother's world and baffle detectives. Love was the second oldest of 4 children and her mother's only daughter. She and her family had just moved with her grandparents in College Park. That meant a new school, new neighbors and new friends for Love, and her 2 of her 3 brothers, one was already in college. She was a junior at Westlake High School. But one staple in her life was ROTC. She could not wait to join the military, especially because she knew it would save her mom money for college. She was like, "Well, when I join the Air Force, I'm going to go, because they say it will help me pay for my college as well as for my younger brother. So, Mom, you won't have to worry about what you just went through with my brother, with sending him to college." She said, "Don't worry, I got you." And those words will forever stick with me, because I know that all she wanted to do was help people, Ham said. At 4:30 p.m., Love called her mom to let her know that she was home and in the house. They talked for a few minutes and shared a giggle or two. "We were laughing with each other, and I'm happy it was a laughing conversation. I had bought her a burger or something to eat when she got out of school the next day, but my son ate it, and she was like, 'I'm gonna get him,' and that's what we were laughed about, because he would always eat her stuff." The call ended with, "Love you, Mommy." "I love you too," Ham remembered saying into her phone. But Ham could have had no idea that that would be the last time she would ever talk to her daughter. When Ham got off work at 7:30 p.m., she went to pick her son up from his basketball game and stopped to get some Wendy's for dinner. She called Love, but with no answer. It wasn't too strange for her daughter not to answer, however, because she had been known to listen to her music with earbuds in and would not hear her phone ring, Ham said. They pulled into the driveway around 9 p.m. It was dark and quiet. Nothing seemed out of place. "When I got home, everything seemed okay," Ham remembered. The door was shut, but unlocked, when her son went into the house ahead of her while she got some things out of the car. He walked right in. "When I came into the house, I didn't really remember her opening the door," she said. As Ham stepped inside the house, she began calling out for Love. "I'm calling her name, and he was looking at me with this blank stare. He was like, 'Mom, she right there.' And I looked down, and, literally had I taken another step or two, I would have tripped over her," Ham vividly recalled. Love was face down in a pool of blood just inside the front hallway, just steps inside the door. "I look down, and I see my baby," she said through tears that quickly fill her eyes. She covers her face with one hand, then uses both to wipe her eyes before tears can fall down her cheeks. I just see her laying down in a puddle of blood and I ran around just to see, and at that point, I don't really remember because I just lost it." The teen, who was wearing a jean jacket over her gray sweatshirt with gym shorts and whimsical gray striped and polka-dotted socks, was lifeless. Her ball earrings and gold watch were still on her body, as was a pack of gum. My son and I ran out of the house because we didn't know if anybody was still in there, or we just didn't know what it was. It was just like it was a bad nightmare, Ham said, who then called 911. "Ma'am, she was laying on the floor and I saw blood and I ran out," Ham said to the 911 dispatch operator. "Was she breathing?" the dispatcher asked. "Ma'am, no," Ham answered. The now crime scene began growing crowded as the ambulance and police arrived. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the tops of the tall pine trees behind the house. The hardest thing for me that night was when I saw that ambulance go in and come back out with an empty, she said, crying, wiping her eyes. With an empty stretcher, because I knew at that point that she was gone. And Ham doesn't have the solace of knowing what happened to her. I don't know who. I don't know why. I just don't know. Because Randisha was a lovable person, smart. She was nice to everybody who she met. For whoever to take her life, especially in the manner of what they did, it was just cruel. It was just so cruel, she said with tears streaming down her face. It was just so cruel. Every day, I cry, every day. Some days, more than others. It's been an unimaginable, gut-wrenching 2 years for the mother of 4. And not a single day passes without shedding tears, thinking of how she found her daughter that night. When I lay down and close my eyes, that's the sight that I see, literally every night. That's the sight I see. I have to kind of shake myself. And some nights I don't sleep, because I don't want to close my eyes and see that sight, Ham said. When Chris Brown's newest CD, Heartbreak on a Full Moon, dropped, Ham immediately swooped it up the first chance she got for her daughter and best friend. It made Ham smile. Brown was Love's favorite singer, and it was something that the inseparable mother-daughter duo would have done together, as shopping was one of their many shared hobbies. "My life is at a standstill right now. I'm trying to constantly pick up the pieces because I'm sure she's probably in heaven, like, Mama, if you don't just put on some clothes and just go and smile somewhere, because that was the type of young lady she was. And some days I laugh and I'm like, Randisha, okay, I'm gonna do it." Following her daughter's tragic death, she still bought her Christmas presents, like the CD, because she just couldn't bear to see an empty spot where her daughter would sit next to her brother's opening presents on Christmas morning. The holidays were always a special time for Love, especially since her birthday was also in December. She loved all the holidays. One thing about Randisha is she loved family. "I just still try to do some of the things that her and I would do that would make me smile," she said, wiping away tears, her voice trembling. "They're some of the things I could see her saying, 'Thank you, Mommy.' I just imagine hearing her say that." Ham still has a letter from Randisha from her last Christmas that said, "Dear Mama, if you're not able to get me everything I want on my Christmas list, I'll be all right because you're doing the best you can to take care of us and get us the things we want on our list. I love you, Mama, and Merry Christmas. P.S. Best mama in the world." It was really hard. I still went Christmas shopping for her, as if I would do any other time. It was really hard. I think it was more so harder coming on Christmas Day because it was like I didn't know how I would feel. It was just so hard not seeing her. At Christmas, each of her kids had a section on the couch for opening gifts. And she couldn't fathom leaving Love's empty last year. Instead of having her there in person, a large framed photo of Love from her last birthday sat on the couch in her place. In the photo, she was donning her 17th birthday outfit, fur-filled, red leather UGG ankle-high boots, a black skirt and a white, black and gray fur vest over her black shirt. The photo was completed with her big smile and long, black braids cascading down her back and over her shoulders. Love's hunter green sweater stocking with a large white R stitched on it was hung with care, with 2 blue and white candy canes protruding from the top and hooked to the lip of the stocking. Ham had wrapped her daughter's gifts in shiny, gold wrapping paper and tied them with bright red bows, a sampling of all her favorites: Puma shoes, a Victoria's Secret's pink pants and jacket set, body spray, colored jeans and her favorite movie, Matilda. She loved seeing her children open their gifts Christmas morning. But that first Christmas without love, all Ham had was a video of her daughter unwrapping her gifts from the Christmas before she was killed. She watched the video all day. "I don't want to face the fact that she's not here, but I just wanted to be like it was the same." For what would have been Love's 18th birthday last December, Ham went all out. Love had been so excited about her upcoming adulthood and celebrating with everyone who loved her. So, they did just that. They celebrated her life with a birthday cake, complete with royal blue icing and black, polka dot trim, light blue, sparkling butterflies and a picture of the City of Lights, Paris. Across the yellow cake was white cursive letters spelling, "Happy 18th birthday Randisha." And above her cake were block letters in lights spelling, "Love." It was amazing. I know that she would be very proud. It was a celebration of her life. I told everyone, "We're not going to be sad. We're just going to celebrate," and that's what we did, Ham said. Love's case may be unsolved, but Lieutenant Roger Peace, an investigator with the Fulton County Police Department's Major Crimes Division, said they may be closer to a suspect than ever before. "We've developed some new information, and we're pending the results of information that we have subpoenaed. And once that information is received by our office, it will hopefully give us a direction to go," he said with confidence, but careful not to divulge any crucial details. "We're waiting with great anticipation for this information to get back to us. In the meantime," he said, "there isn't a lot for them to go on. There are no witnesses, so all we know is that the mom came home and found Randisha Love lying in the foyer of the home. And we learned she sustained and died from multiple gunshot wounds," Peace said. "No suspects have been identified, however, they have ruled out any immediate family," he said. "Right now, it would be speculation of whether it was somebody trying to break into the home or found the front door unlocked, or did she open the door for somebody that she knew. It's just unknown at this time." According to Peace, her phone records indicate that she made 2 phone calls that day. One to her mom when she left her house and another to her mom when she was home. "That would tell me that was somebody who basically kept to themselves," he concluded. The subdivision she was living in with her mom, brothers and grandparents wasn't a high-crime area, the investigator confirmed. No neighbors recalled hearing any gunshots that day. "We believe this happened during the time frame when most people would still be at work," the investigator said. The medical examiner's autopsy report showed that at least 3 medium-caliber, yellow metal bullets were recovered from Love's body. The cause and manner of death isn't the mystery, however. The motive is. It's still unknown of what the motive may have been or what transpired. Either she opened the door for somebody she knew from school or the neighborhood, or it was somebody who gained entrance to the house. Either she didn't lock the front door or she opened the door and let them in, or she opened the door and the forced entry. It's tragic. It's a tragedy that such a thing happened to such a low-risk person, to be a victim of a violent crime, Peace said. Randisha was very well liked by all of her classmates. She had plans to join the military. She was an honor student. This was a kid who, we didn't find anyone that knew her at school or the neighborhood who said anything negative about her. Waking up every day without her, not hear her voice, just, when I open my eyes, I hope that I'm waking up from the nightmare I'm in, Ham said. Just waking up every day without her, just to breathe without her is hard. Literally, living every day without her is a challenge for the single mother. Simple tasks that most would take for granted, like when she orders food for her family and only orders 3 burgers instead of 4, it makes her cringe and remember that she doesn't need to order a burger for her daughter anymore. While police have told her that they are still searching for who did this, she made a plea of her own. "We just need the public's help at this point to help solve this case, because whoever this is, they have no heart. For them to just leave my baby just like that was the worst thing that a mother could ever see," Ham said, sobbing. "I know when this person or persons is arrested, it won't bring her back, but to me, she'll rest a little easier. It'll bring me closure." A firm believer of God, No matter how, she said, she may feel about the person who did this to her daughter, Love would have forgiven them. She would say, "You know what, Mommy? I forgive them. And I know she'd ask me to do the same." But Ham said she cannot bring herself to forgive whoever took her daughter from her. "Not yet. I can't say that right now. I can't say that right now." But she hopes that her story will save someone else from the same heartbreak. "I wouldn't want any other mother to feel like this. And if my story can tell the next person, before you think about killing someone, you don't only kill that person. You take away the life of everybody that was close to that person. This took something out of everybody. A part of my heart to me is gone. I think I skip a heartbeat every time because I miss her so much. It's hard for me to breathe because I know she's not." These days, Love's family celebrates her milestones, like her graduation, graveside. It's where they can gather and be with her. Last spring, balloons waved in the wind and bounced gently off each other, next to signs cheering, "You did it," for her graduation party. I still try to do things to honor her, as if she were here, you know, some of the things that her and I had planned on doing. I haven't been able to do everything, but I'm still trying to do some of the things, as if she was here, Ham said. Instead of shopping for a prom dress with her daughter, Ham is reduced to visiting Love at the cemetery to talk to her. But it's not easy to face her absence, and the raw emotions boil to the surface with each passing day that her daughter's death remains unsolved. "Ooh, oh, I love you, baby girl," Ham sobs, talking to her daughter at the cemetery. "I just miss you so much. I want my baby. I want my baby." She promises Randisha that she will return the following Sunday for her 19th birthday. Within seconds, tears are racing down her cheeks. With her mom and nieces by her side, she cups her face with her hands and sobs loudly. She uses both palms to wipe her entire, tear-filled face. "I miss you so much," she tells her daughter, whose face is largely displayed on her t-shirt's front and back, keeping her love and her memory alive. Through her tears, Ham, who now has her daughter's first and middle names scrolled on her forearms with hearts and a crown, makes another promise to her daughter that she wholeheartedly intends to keep. "We got you, Disha. We're still seeking justice. Can't stop. Won't stop. Justice for Randisha. We won't stop until we get it," she whispers under her breath. When her daughter's killer is caught, Ham believes that she might finally be able to close her eyes and not see her daughter lying on the floor dead. "I think I'll be able to see her, smiling and saying, 'Mommy, you did it. You didn't stop, and you did it.'" If you have any information about Randisha Love's murder, call the Fulton County Police Department at 404-613-5700 or Crime Stoppers at 404-577 tips.
Number 3.
Chase Tyler Massner was born on September 4, 1987, to his father Corbin Massner and his mother Stephanie Cadena. Both parents were very young, just a hair above 20 years old, so it's not a huge shock to me that the two didn't grow old together. Records for Chase's early life are few and far in between, the only thing being an arrest for marijuana possession on August 22, 2005. Chase was just 18, and the mugshot of him is a far cry from the man he would later become. The charge didn't stick, though, or else Chase wouldn't have been able to accomplish one of his life goals, enlisting in the United States Army. In the latter half of the 2000s, Chase would join the U.S. military, and he would later get sent halfway across the world to serve a year in Iraq. When Chase returned, he was suffering from the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder. At least, that's what his wife, Amanda, would later state. Amanda and Chase would date and get married during this time period, the time around Chase's return from Iraq. He would be discharged from the army, presumably due to cutbacks. Kristen Amanda Chatham, who was called Amanda by everyone in her life, would become Amanda Massner. The couple's first child, a beautiful daughter named Sydney, would be born shortly thereafter. I wish I could say that things would come together for this young couple, who presumably didn't want to repeat the mistakes of Chase's parents. Unfortunately, their situation would become complicated over the next few years, creating a situation that would make any future investigation a nightmare. It seems that, throughout his lifetime, Chase had remained close to his family. His mother, Stephanie Cadena, has worked with a family-owned auto repair company for years now and always had a close relationship with her son. Apparently, whenever Chase had trouble with Amanda, he would go to his mother's to stay the night or to simply talk and discuss his issues. The two seemed to have the type of relationship that any mother and son should have. However, Chase's relationship with his dad is a definite mystery to me. Corbin Massner, Chase's father, as an entity that I consider a wildcard to the investigation. He was apparently a truck driver who in the months before Chase's disappearance had moved in with Chase's family. He had apparently been let go from his job for a reason I'll discuss later. This would only compound a financial situation that was getting tricky for Chase and his wife Amanda to manage. You see, after Chase had been discharged from the military, he would struggle to make ends meet. He would work random job, but struggled to stay employed to the point of providing for his family. Then, when Amanda became pregnant with their second child, that struggle worsened. He took a job as the night manager of a nearby Quick Trip located off of Bells Ferry Road in Kennesaw, Georgia. This meant that he would have to work the overnight shift, but would be able to at least keep a roof over his family's head for the time being. This Quick Trip was about 13 miles away from the Massner family home, located on Serenoa Drive in Canton, Georgia. However, it was just over a mile away from the home of Chase's friend, Brad Clement, who will come into play momentarily. When one looks at pictures of Chase's home, located up in Canton, Georgia, they wonder how a family of 5, if you include Chase's father, Corbin, was able to live in it off of just a single hourly wage. Word has been that the couple got a good deal on it, but as someone who's worked hourly jobs for the better part of the last decade, I truly wonder how far that extends. Because of this financial instability, things had been growing tense between Chase and Amanda. Now with 2 kids on their hands and Chase's schedule completely flipped on its head, things seemed poised to snap for the young couple struggling to make ends meet. In March of 2014, the struggles between Chase and Amanda continued. Their arguments were becoming more and more frequent, and apparently Chase would use his mother, Stephanie Cadena, as an outlet of sorts to help mediate the issue. At times, this would just be Stephanie called to help out with an issue or two. However, at others, it would mean Chase staying at her house for a night or two to simply let the couple have some space and work out their differences at a later date. Amanda called Stephanie and apparently told her about the issues the couple had been having lately. Most of it stemmed from their financial woes, but there was a lot of frustration and tension there. According to both Stephanie and Amanda, it wasn't anything insurmountable, but it was leading the couple to a place that they didn't want to be. So it was decided that Chase would spend a few nights at his mom's house to let cooler heads prevail. On Wednesday, March 26, Amanda picked up Chase from his mother, Stephanie's home. The kids were in the backseat, waiting to see their dad once again. They all said their goodbyes, Stephanie having no idea at the time that it would be the last time she'd see her son. This is where the story begins to enter the murky territory of he said, she said. From this point forward, all we have to go on is the testimony of the band of characters around Chase Massner. Namely, his wife and the friend I mentioned just a moment ago, Brad Clements. On the way home from Chase's mother's home, apparently, the arguments struck up once again. It was apparently so bad that the couple didn't even make it home together. Some have rumored that Amanda kicked Chase out of the car, but all we know is that Chase would be dropped off just a few miles away at the Quick Trip location he worked at off of Bells Ferry Road. Seeing as how the couple lived over 10 miles away, north in Canton, it goes to reason that the couple had been in the car for only a few minutes before the argument got so bad that they couldn't even make it home together. James Bradshaw Clement, most commonly referred to by his middle name Brad, was a friend of Chase's. I can't tell you how the two became friends, whether they knew each other before Chase's deployment to Iraq or not, but they were roughly the same age, and both of them grew up in the Atlanta, Georgia area. They had apparently only hung out together a few times, so I'm curious as to how they became acquainted. Brad lived in Kennesaw, Georgia, which is a small town about half an hour to the north of Atlanta on a good day. I live not too far from this area, so I can just tell you that the Atlanta area itself is very, very busy, but the surrounding areas are surprisingly beautiful. You can travel just a few miles outside of Atlanta and hit some scenic patches of forest. Kennesaw is no exception, with a beautiful downtown and a population hovering at around 30,000. Brad worked with computers for a living, which he would fix up in his house. Records show that he was also working for T-Mobile at around this time period, but without speaking to him, I can't verify that. Nonetheless, Brad was a pretty self-made man. He owned his own home, a rather nice one, at the end of a cul-de-sac on Farmbrook Trail. He seemed like a regular guy, still does, despite the maelstrom that has become his life in the years since. After Amanda dropped Chase off at the Quick Trip he worked at, which was just over a mile away from Brad's home, he apparently went to pick up his buddy. For the rest of the evening, these two friends apparently spent a good chunk of their time talking. Brad remembers that Chase told him all about the issues him and Amanda were having, and that the two just hung around to shoot the breeze. And, according to Brad, he also tried to play mediator for a bit. For a while after Chase's future disappearance, text messages between him and Amanda on the night in question would become analyzed by investigators, but apparently most of them were sent by Brad himself. He was texting Amanda through Chase's phone, trying to help the two of them bridge the gap. In his texts to Amanda, he apparently had begun floating the idea of a barbecue. You see, Brad was having roofers working on his house throughout this time period, in March of 2014, and he was planning to host a barbecue for them the next night. He wanted Chase to invite Amanda and their kids, and hopefully help calm things down with some burgers and hot dogs. Or whatever it was they were cooking. Maybe I'm just hungry and daydreaming. The next morning, on Thursday the 27th of March, Brad woke up with the intention of delivering a computer to a client's home. He had been working on it for a bit and had been finishing it up the previous night as he spoke to Chase. He told Chase to hang out at his house for a bit, just to sleep in and catch a bit of a break. This is where one of the most peculiar aspects of the story come into play. When Brad left to deliver the computer, he took Chase's cell phone with him. Chase's cell phone case was also his wallet, so this meant that Brad was taking away Chase's lifeline, essentially. However, he states that he was doing this in an effort to keep Chase at his home. After all, without his cell phone or his wallet, how would Chase get anywhere? Needless to say, the story continues to get muddled after this. One of the biggest hurdles facing this story is whether or not Brad Clements was telling the truth. Because, as sad as it is to say, all we know about Chase's final hours are based off of his testimony. He recalls the day that Chase vanished as a rather mundane one. He had taken Chase's cell phone with him to prevent Chase from leaving his house and ran some errands with it in his possession. He delivered his computer, came back home, and apparently Chase was still there. But then he states that he left again that afternoon to pick up groceries for the barbecue, and around this time was when Chase disappeared. People have questioned whether Brad was telling the truth about all of that. Any of that, rather. In a recent interview on Nancy Grace's podcast, Brad tells of how him and Chase smoked some weed and drank some alcohol on the night in question, but doesn't go into much detail. He also states that, when he picked up Chase, he found the Army veteran looking for Roxy pills, also known as Roxicodone, an opiate pain reliever that has become popular over the last few years. You'd think that this would be a huge clue for the investigation. If someone is ever trying to score drugs, all they need is a contact to get the drugs and the money to purchase them. Brad pleads ignorance when it comes to that kind of substance, stating that he had taken them in the past after a car accident and disliked them, but didn't know where to get any. However, he also claims to have given Chase $60 before his disappearance, which leads me to think that Chase might have been looking for a substance for any reason at all, whether it be his relationship issues, his claimed PTSD, or whatever. This is something that a lot of media outlets seem to have overlooked. Brad, while perhaps being the wild card of the entire story, is the only person we have that can vouch for the final 24 hours of Chase's life, and most of what he says is brushed off to the side as people rush to suspicions about him, personally. As I said just a moment ago, during this time period, Brad was having work done to his house. Primarily, having his roof replaced by a small operation known as Duck's Roofing. Brandon Duck, the owner and operator of Duck's Roofing, was at Brad's house for a large chunk of that day, along with a couple of his employees. When Brad returned from running errands, the roofers remember seeing him and interacting with him. They had also seen him that morning when they first showed up. They were also planning on staying, as Brad had invited them for a cookout. Brad returned from the grocery store and began preparing for the barbecue. He claims that, in the process of getting the grill going, that he accidentally caught a section of his backyard on fire. He apparently had to go through quite an ordeal putting it out, and when he came back inside to talk to Chase about it, his friend was allegedly gone. This is when the following phone call takes place. This voicemail establishes just a couple of things. First off, this means that Chase had disappeared or gone missing in the middle of the day. You'd think that someone would have seen him leaving, since Brad's house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it would have taken Chase a good walk to get out of the neighborhood. However, another thing it establishes is that Brad's testimony was getting shaky. You see, those roofers that were working on his house? Brandon Duck, who had at least 2 coworkers with him. None of them remember seeing Chase at all, not in the morning, not in the afternoon, and definitely not leaving Brad Clement's home. I don't want to throw any stones at Brad Clement, for all I know, he's as innocent as anyone in this story, but things like that don't do him any favors. He would later state that hearing that Chase had left from his roofers was just a simple miscommunication, but one has to wonder how such a thing happens. How would someone tell you a house guest had left when they had no idea they were there in the first place? It just boggles the mind. Needless to say, though, the search was beginning for Chase Massner. Apparently, before Brad made his call to Chase's phone, word had already spread to Chase's family. I couldn't tell you how the game of telephone worked, but at this point, Brad was under the assumption that Amanda had picked up Chase from his home while he was in the backyard. However, it was clear that Chase's family had begun discussing Chase's extended absence just a tad beforehand. That was a call from Stephanie Cadena, Chase's mother, placed roughly 15 minutes before Brad called Chase. In it, she's already worrying about Chase's whereabouts after learning that he had never made it home with Amanda the prior evening. They began to work their way through the motions, finding out where Chase had last been and working their way from there. Amanda and Stephanie got in touch with Brad, who informed them that Chase had slipped out that afternoon, apparently being spotted by the roofers working on his home, which we now know didn't happen. However, they began to get in touch with Chase's other friends and associates, but had no such luck in finding him. No one in Brad's neighborhood recalls seeing Chase that afternoon. You can't really blame them on that. Would you be aware of someone walking around your neighborhood in the approximate time frame of 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon? I wouldn't. But the odds of no one spotting him has to be pretty low, I wager. Nonetheless, Chase had disappeared without a trace. His story was soon called into the police, but unfortunately, they began investigating him as a voluntary departure. Meaning, of course, that they believe he disappeared willingly. One of the many aspects of the case that has continued to haunt it, now 3+ years later, is the fact that it was first investigated by Chase's hometown Cherokee County Police Force. As I stated before, he lived in Canton, Georgia, with his wife, Amanda, his 2 children, and now his father, Corbin. Therefore, it fell upon Cherokee County Police to investigate his absence. But, when things like this happen, things fall in between the gaps. I covered this type of occurrence back in the Long Island serial killer episodes, when some of the girls, namely Shannon Gilbert, disappeared in one area, but had their cases handled by their hometown police force, who often lived miles away. Chase was last seen in Kennesaw, Georgia, which is located in Cobb County. Because of the overlap, this saw the case hit some hurdles from the very get-go. The most insurmountable disadvantage Chase's family saw was when police investigated Chase's disappearance as a voluntary absence. This meant, basically, that they thought he had run away. On Nancy Grace's podcast episodes featuring an interview with Brad Clement, he states that Chase had stated, on more than one occasion, that he was going to run away and live in the woods. Obviously, I can't say That this was a common expression of his. I can't find anyone else that vouches for these statements, but police must have found some hint of truth in them because they didn't think that there was anything nefarious about Chase's disappearance. But as the hours turned into days, the belief that he had simply gone willing into the night began to be stretched thin. He supposedly had his debit card and cell phone with him, but the last that his debit card was used was the night before his disappearance, Wednesday, March 26th. This was also the night that he had gone over to Brad's home. It was just for a couple of dollars, I believe, meaning that it could have been for anything: soda, a beer, a snack, chapstick, etc. The last time that Chase's phone would be used was the next day, March 27th. This was the day he disappeared. He had made a call the night before, on Wednesday, at roughly 10:30 in the evening, but I couldn't tell you to who that call was made. You see, the unfortunate thing is that, just like Chase, we have no idea what happened to his cell phone. Some statements would have you believe that Brad was holding onto it all day long, but there's just no evidence to support that. And some statements have perhaps been taken out of context to imply that Amanda has had it, but we do know that Chase had upgraded his phone a month or so before his absence, meaning that Amanda may have simply had Chase's old phone, which would likely still have old text messages, photos, contacts, etc. However, none of this would help police. Even when they began to investigate Chase's case more urgently, and it was finally handed back to the Cobb County Police Squad, whose jurisdiction was the area where Chase actually disappeared, all trace of him was gone in the wind. Brad Clement has not been alone in facing backlash regarding statements made after Chase's disappearance. Amanda Massner, Chase's own wife, has also become one of the internet's prime suspects because of conflicting statements she made about the last night she was with Chase, Wednesday, March 26th. In the days after her husband's disappearance, Amanda supposedly gave conflicting statements about where, exactly, she had dropped him off. Stephanie Cadena, Chase's mother, recalls hearing from Amanda that she had dropped him off at the Quick Trip he worked at. However, she also recalls hearing in another instance how Amanda had dropped him off directly at Brad's home. Here's a phone call Amanda was making to someone, in which she mentions how scrutinized she would become in the weeks and months after Chase's disappearance. Amanda would also face scrutiny from Brad Clements himself, of all people. In his recent interview with Nancy Grace, Brad alleges that Amanda came to him the day after Chase's disappearance, not only looking for weed, but also hitting on him. He says, without explicitly saying, that she was flirting with him, as if she was mad at Chase for running away and wanted to get back at him in some way. Brad also alleges that Amanda's mother was growing weed and that Amanda was somehow involved in that operation, but gives no real details. Here's Amanda when questioned by a veterans group who would launch a search for Chase. A few things to unpack from that. First of all, it's hard to differentiate whether or not she's talking about Chase having an issue with marijuana or heroin at the end there. Before this audio, I was honestly unaware that Chase had struggled with any hard narcotics in the past. When you read about him, it's generally very positive stuff. When it comes to missing persons reports, you don't often hear about the negatives of their life. Which sucks, in my opinion, because it's often those negatives that can help create leads to find out what happened to them. Case in point, if Chase had had issues in the past with heroin and was out looking for an opiate, it makes sense to think that he might have gotten a hold of some. But I'll get into that later. However, another piece from that audio is at the very beginning when Amanda mentions that she had closed off from everyone. In the weeks after Chase's disappearance, Amanda was very much in front of the case, pleading with everything and everyone to help bring about some results. However, over time, she has become more withdrawn, eventually leaving Georgia and refusing to speak to anyone. This is mainly because of a man named Paul Libri. Paul Libri was a private investigator operating out of Georgia who became embedded in the search to find Chase Massner in 2014. He endeared himself to Amanda Massner and I'm assuming was eventually hired by the mother of two to find her missing husband. However, unbeknownst to Amanda, Paul Libri was facing charges of impersonating a police officer in another investigation, which would eventually land him in prison with a conviction. He had apparently pretended to be a cop during the investigation of a missing teenage girl in Palmetto, Georgia. In 2015, he was found guilty of 2 charges of impersonating a police officer and 1 charge each of both identity fraud and obstruction of justice, charges spanning across multiple occasions where he had pretended to be a cop. It was after putting so much faith and information in the hands of a private investigator, that Amanda began to shut herself off from the outside world. She hasn't spoken to the media in quite some time, not about Chase, his disappearance, or anything involving the two. She left Georgia with her daughters and moved to Iowa, under odd circumstances. If I may, I'll turn the focus back on Brad Clairmont for a bit. In the weeks after Chase Massner's disappearance, Brad was not suspected of any wrongdoing. Police didn't believe that he had anything to do with Chase being missing. After all, they were originally investigating him as a voluntary departure. Brad was originally asked to take a polygraph by the police, but refused. He stated that his nerves would have been too messed up to take one. And honestly, I can't blame him. After doing a good amount of research on polygraphs, I don't believe that they're good indicators of truth whatsoever. Anyone with a brain can try and figure out how to fake one, which I talked about a bit in the Misty Copsy episodes of this podcast. Also, they don't measure truth whatsoever, just someone's stress level regarding a question, the verbiage of which can be what triggers a response, not the question itself. For example, if I were to ask you, did you kill this person? You might have a strong response, no matter whether you did or not. I can't blame Brad for not wanting to subject himself to that and implicate himself based on a heartbeat. However, word began to reach police that Brad, who had been having work done on his home, had had a dumpster in front of his house. Several people, many of Chase's friends and family, wanted police to investigate this. Police would eventually get around to it some time after Chase had already gone missing. However, they would later discover that the dumpster they had examined at a local landfill had been the wrong one. By the time they recognized their mistake, it was too costly to remedy. The dumpster had already been dumped into a local landfill, and they've openly admitted to Chase's family that the cost of going back to search the area where the dumpster was disposed of would be upwards of 7 digits. Sadly, even if this was more than just a hunch, it would be a very costly endeavor. And the chances of them finding something after more than 3 years would be slim to none to begin with. But that was just another mistake in a long list of them that would go on to damage the integrity of the investigation. Brad Clairmont was never an official suspect by police, even though the story of this mysterious dumpster and his ever-changing alibi have made him a prime suspect in the public eye. He has faced severe public backlash in the years since, which even drove him out of his home and out of the area he grew up in. He moved out of his home just months after Chase disappeared, and his only public sighting was during his interview with Nancy Grace just a month or so ago. I'll get into some theories of mine in just a moment, but I had the opportunity to speak to famous personality Nancy Grace not too long ago. I know that she's a very divisive figure when it comes to true crime, but I was pleasantly surprised that she took the time to speak to me about Chase Massner, which is a story she has done a lot to promote. Also, I'll apologize for some of the audio quality. After my digital recording got corrupted, I had to utilize my backup recorder's version of the conversation. It was my first interview, so I hope you all cut me some slack. But here you go, my conversation with Nancy Grace. I'm really grateful to Nancy for speaking to me. At the time, I wasn't too well versed on some of the issues, but she really helped clarify them for me and explained her thoughts on the matter. So, if you're listening, Nancy, thank you. I know many have disagreements on how she broaches certain stories, but she was nothing but nice to me. There were a few things, however, that I disagree with her about. Namely, of course, the issue of drugs and mental illnesses, which I've briefly touched on in this episode. It seems to me that the topic of drugs haven't really been brought up at all in relation to Chase's disappearance. He was arrested for the possession of marijuana as a baby-faced 18-year-old, and according to the conversation we listened to between Amanda and another woman, Chase may have had issues with heroin in the past. Then, of course, we have Brad saying that Chase was looking for Roxy's, Ocoroxicodone, an opioid pain reliever. While this may just be a byproduct of Brad deflecting, it's a worthy lead to consider that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about. During the research for this episode, I happened to stumble upon a few articles talking about heroin use in Georgia, most printed at around the time period that Chase disappeared. Now, I'm not saying that I believe Chase did heroin. For all I know, he never touched this stuff. So I just want to preempt the discussion by saying that. However, considering that we've heard audio of his wife discussing the fact that he may have had a problem with narcotics in the past, and that the last known person Chase spoke to said he was looking for opiates, I think it's at least worthy of a discussion. With that said, I think it's relevant to note that between 2013 and 2014, the amount of people killed due to drug overdoses increased by over 10%. That's not nothing. In 2010, the state faced just 3 deaths caused by heroin overdoses. In 2013, that number had risen to 32. Then, in 2014, that number had nearly doubled from the year prior to 59 deaths caused by heroin in the state of Georgia. That was a heartbreaking story, which I find very similar to that of Chase Massner's. Davis Owen was a promising young man with the entire world in front of him. It's also noteworthy that this story was presented by WSB-TV less than a week before Chase Massner's disappearance and came at around the time a batch of tainted heroin had hit the area of Atlanta. Davis Owen attended school at Kennesaw State University, not even 5 minutes away from the Quick Trip that Chase worked at, just 3 or so miles away from where Brad Clairmont lived. Here's a phone conversation between Brad Clairmont and Amanda Massner on April 16 of 2014, just a few weeks after Chase had disappeared. It's also worth noting that this conversation took place at 2 o'clock in the morning, which explains why Amanda sounds so tired. To me, it sounds like Brad is implying that Chase might have searched out a local drug dealer or someone that he had associated with drugs in the past. It seems like in the beginning, Brad is hinting at something other than weed, which Amanda casually states. Maybe that's just me reading too much into it after listening to that recording dozens of times, but I find this conversation very intriguing. Like I said earlier in the episode, I don't want to believe that Chase Massner was the victim of a heroin overdose. But, unfortunately, the alternatives don't sound much more plausible. I don't believe that someone would have tried to abduct Chase, an Army veteran who was still in great shape, and I also don't believe that he would have willingly ran away and left his family behind. The only other plausible alternative, I feel, is that Chase was suffering from severe mental health issues. He had been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder after his tour in Iraq, which we know after hearing his wife, Amanda, say so in an audio clip. I've also seen reports that Chase may have been suffering from the beginning stages of bipolar disorder, but that seems more like internet speculation than anything. He would be at the right age for a mental instability to start manifesting itself, but we have no definitive proof that that's what was happening. Brad Clairmont said in an offhand remark that Chase had talked about running off and living in the woods. Who knows? Maybe he did. Maybe he's been living in the Georgia woods for years, surviving and scavenging. That's what I'd like to think happened to Chase Massner. In the years since Chase Massner disappeared, many of the lives he touched have struggled to move on. Brad Clairmont, the friend who was the last known person to see Chase, has struggled. He gave up his big house in Kennesaw, Georgia, and has struggled to remain employed. He states that the scrutiny brought upon him following the disappearance of his friend is just too much. He hopes that his recent interview with Nancy Grace will help clear his name. Amanda Massner, Chase's wife, moved out of Georgia with the couple's 2 kids roughly a year after Chase went missing. She also faced her fair amount of scrutiny and decided that it wasn't a good environment for their 2 children to grow up in. She moved to the Burlington region of Iowa, which not coincidentally is where Chase's father, Corbin, lives. Corbin Massner, who had been living with the couple in the months before Chase's disappearance, is an enigma to me. I can see that he has a bit of a checkered past when it comes to the law, which I won't go into detail about here, and was let go from his job in 2013 because of it. That's why he was living with his son's family during this time period. It seems like Amanda chose to remain close to Corbin, her children's grandfather, and followed him back to Iowa. Stephanie Cadena, Chase's mother, still lives in Georgia and has remained the most vocal proponent of finding Chase over the past few years. Answers about Chase Massner have been few and far in between. He received a strong show of support from the online community in the first year or so after his disappearance, but bickering and infighting between the groups led to much of the conversations getting blocked or deleted. I've been trying to speak to the largest Facebook community in search of people that know Chase, but have gotten nowhere. A short while after Chase went missing, a mysterious comment by his father Corbin inspired a bit of controversy. He told members of the online community to stop posting about Chase and implied that he'd never be found. This comment, while very odd and off-putting, has resulted in no new information coming to light. Several groups, including some veterans groups and Missing in America, have conducted searches in the area around Cobb and Cherokee County to try and track down Chase. Unfortunately, after 3 years, they have yet to find anything concrete. Chase Massner stood 6'2" and weighed about 175 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He was a physically attractive young man with dark hair and multiple tattoos. He had tattoos on his chest, including 2 roses, his last name Massner scrawled along the top of his back, the phrase "Never Depart 27-2010" on his right forearm, and other miscellaneous tattoos. He was last seen wearing a red Quick Trip sweatshirt and khaki pants. If any of these sound familiar, please get in touch with the Cobb County Police Department at 770-499-3945. The reward for information is now $5,000, and this case has been forwarded to the Cold Case Unit. The story of Chase Massner is still unresolved.
Number 4.
18-year-old Thomas Kelly Brown vanished on November 23, 2016. He spent that evening with 2 friends in their hometown of Canadian, Texas. One of his friends dropped him off at their high school parking lot around 11:30 p.m., where Thomas's car was parked. A few minutes later, at 11:36 p.m., Thomas was seen getting gas at a nearby gas station. He was expected to be home by his 12 a.m. curfew, but unfortunately he never showed up. At 12:03 a.m., Thomas's brother texted him to ask where he was. That message was never read. Thomas's final phone ping occurred shortly thereafter at 12:10 a.m., near a tower close to the high school football field. Minutes later, at 12:22 a.m., Thomas's phone was shut off. This is the last known trace of him, and he has never been seen or heard from again. Thomas rarely ever missed his curfew, so his family immediately grew concerned when he did not show up as expected. They reported him missing by 1:30 a.m. The search for Thomas began immediately. At 8:45 a.m. on November 24, searchers found Thomas's car parked under some trees at a wastewater treatment. Thomas's personal belongings such as his wallet, keys, laptop and cell phone were missing from the car. Additionally, a small fresh blood stain was found on the driver's side door. That blood was later identified as Thomas's. A .25 caliber shell casing was found at the scene as well. Thomas's family members and friends were completely baffled by his disappearance. He had a happy life at home and there was no indication that he planned to run away. Thomas was student body president at his high school and was popular amongst his friends. He had a girlfriend in college whom he always kept in touch with. Thomas's friends told investigators that Thomas was acting normally before he vanished and nothing seemed amiss before they parted ways on the evening of November 23, 2016. A few months after his disappearance, Thomas's backpack was found in a wooded area a few miles away from where his car was found. The backpack appeared to have been in that location for months, and it contained Thomas's school books and laptop. Investigators completed a forensic analysis on the computer that yielded no clues, as it only had school-related content on it. Both investigators and Thomas's family members never believed that Thomas left on his own accord. In fact, in June 2018, the lead investigator in the case stated that authorities are 90% sure Thomas was murdered. Over 2 years after his disappearance, in early 2019, Human remains were found off of Lake Martin Road in Lake Marvin, Texas. On January 15, 2019, it was confirmed that the remains were that of Thomas Brown. In a press statement released by the Hemphill County Sheriff's Office, it was explained that the remains were found by a person that heard the call from law enforcement and the firm asking for everyone to keep an eye on Lake Marvin Road. The investigation into Thomas's death is still ongoing, and a cause of death has still not been determined. His death is being investigated as a murder.
Number 5.
Amanda Clairmont was a 21-year-old student at the University of North Texas, UNT, studying business, some outlets say religious studies, while also pursuing her passion for makeup. She was a senior at UNT and had worked at a makeup counter in Nordstrom at Stonebriar Mall in Frisco since she was 18. Clairmont had moved to Texas in 2007, joining other family members in Texas following her mother's death. She first lived in McKinney before settling in Frisco and attended Liberty High School, where she was considered to be pretty popular among her peers. Clairmont enrolled at UNT in 2014, following her graduation from high school. Her most recent address according to public records is in Denton, but a friend stated that she was living in Corinth at the time of her murder. 2 weeks before she was found murdered, she had created a new Instagram account to showcase her makeup artistry abilities. Her half-brother Mike Golick said she loved helping people with hair and just anything to help someone feel good about themselves. On the night of her murder, Golick said he learned from friends that Clairmont had been out drinking in the Fry Street bar area. This is a popular area with UNT students. Another witness said that Clairmont was with at least one person at the time. However, Golick stated that Clairmont was not a heavy drinker and did not use drugs. This is possibly the last time she was seen. In the early hours of November 19, 2017, Clairmont's body was found during a patrol near Church Drive and the Interstate 35E service road in Corinth. The car headlights were on, and the passenger door was open. The car was parked against the fence, but some news outlets report the car has crashed into the fence. The parking lot where she was found borders a Nissan dealership and a few houses. A nearby resident stated that she heard several gunshots in the area between midnight and 1 a.m., but did not hear any vehicles speeding out of the area. The amount of gunshot wounds that Clairmont had has not been revealed, as the Corinth PD states this is a critical piece of the investigation. Likewise, they have not released the type of vehicle that she was found in. The Corinth PD insists that this is not a cold case and that it is an isolated incident. Clairmont's death is also the first homicide to be investigated by the Corinth PD in 17 years. Very few details have been released in the nearly 3 years since her death. There have been no real updates since the murder occurred, and a spokesman for the Corinth PD stated that the police would update the public more if they had reason to believe anybody involved with Clairmont's death poses other threats to the public. At this time, it is unclear if they have a suspect in the case, which remains open. Anyone with information is asked to call Corinth Police at 940-498-2017.
Number 6.
25-year-old Beatriz Espinoza vanished from Norcross, Georgia on March 24, 2017. She was last heard from around 10 a.m. on that day when she spoke to her sister on the phone. At that time, Beatriz was with her 3-year-old son while her sister was watching her older son. Beatriz told her sister that her 3-year-old son was sick and she would be coming by to get her older son soon. Unfortunately, Beatriz never showed up to pick up her son and has never been heard from again. Around 11 a.m. the following day, Beatriz's 3-year-old son was found wandering around by himself at a shopping center near their home. Beatriz was still nowhere to be found. She was subsequently reported missing to the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Department. Shortly thereafter, it was learned that Beatriz had never shown up for work the previous evening. Her vehicle was found in its normal spot at her home. A family friend later told police that Beatriz's 3-year-old son's backpack, which was found in Beatriz's car, contained bags of methamphetamine and marijuana. This led many to fear that drugs might have played a role in Beatriz's disappearance. The same friend also reportedly received a phone call from an unidentified man in Mexico who said that Beatriz owed him $30,000 and he wanted it back. A few months later, a man walking his dogs in Clayton County found two bodies in a wooded area. For nearly 2 years, it was unclear if the bodies were connected to Beatriz's disappearance. Initially, it did not appear as such since Clayton County is miles away from where Beatriz vanished in Gwinnett County. However, in June 2019, one of the sets of remains was confirmed to be that of Beatriz Espinoza. Authorities also confirmed that Beatriz was a victim of homicide. The second set of remains is still unidentified, and it is unclear, at this time, if the two cases are connected. Authorities are continuing to investigate both deaths. Rest in peace, Beatriz.
Number 7.
Candice Taylor vanished at the age of 21 in March 2017. She was reportedly last seen in the northeast side of Columbus, Ohio. Candice's mother reported her missing on March 17, 2017. There is very little information on the exact circumstances of her disappearance, however Candice's mother stated that she continued to receive text messages from Candice's phone up until June 2017. The first text message was sent shortly after Candice was reported missing. The message stated that Candice was pregnant and she was going to Cincinnati to clear her head. The next set of messages were sent during the months of April and May. During those months, Candice's mother reportedly received messages from Candice's phone stating that she wanted space for a month or two. The last message Candice's mother received was on June 24, 2017, Candice's 22nd birthday. Candice's mother reportedly sent her a text to wish her a happy birthday, to which she received a response that simply stated thanks. At the time the messages were received, Candice's mother appeared to believe that they were sent by Candice herself even, though Candice had not been seen by any of her family members or friends since March of 2017. Just days after Candice was reported missing, on March 29, 2017, a set of human legs were found in a garbage truck at a garbage sorting facility on the northwest side of Columbus. Investigators searched the areas along the garbage truck's route, but did not find any other remains or clues. It took nearly 2 years to identify who the legs belonged to, but in January 2019, investigators confirmed that the partial remains were that of Candice Taylor. At the time the partial remains were found, Candice's mother still believed that her daughter was alive as she was still receiving text messages from her phone for months after the fact. However, once the human remains were identified, police shifted Candice's case into a homicide investigation. If Candice has been deceased since March of 2017, it is clear that the text messages that her mother received from Candice's phone were not from Candice herself. It appears likely that whoever had her phone knows what happened to Candice, but the phone has never been located, and police have not publicly announced any suspects or persons of interest in the case. No other parts of Candice's body have been found. Though her case is being treated as a possible homicide, she is still listed as a missing person in the NamUs database. Candice's case remains unsolved. If you have any information that could help the investigation, please contact the Ohio Homicide Detectives at 614-645-4730.